You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of November 8th, 2024. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where it's now 727 days until the 2026 midterms. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. Hello, Blue Gal. How you doing?
Hello, Driftglass. I love you.
I love you too. I'm very glad I'm married to you, especially at times like these.
Times like these, it's good to have someone to hold on to. Yeah.
I imagine,
I'm grateful.
Like a lot of people who were listening to this, we had some bad nights and days in the last couple
days. Thank you to everyone who wrote to us.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of emails saying chop wood, carry water. Lots of them.
Yeah. Asking how we were. And we're doing okay. Yeah. We're doing like you're doing. You know, this is a disaster, and we are all figuring out how to move forward, and we're going to do it together. That's all I know. What I don't need, and this is going to sound a bit hypocritical, because when have I not been a hypocrite? I listened to a bunch of sort of post-disaster podcasters, just trying to figure out what the liberal networks, the bigs, were telling their people, and they're all fine. They have their place. But honestly, them telling the listeners that it's okay to feel this way or that. The last thing I need to hear from any podcaster is giving me permission to feel the way I feel.
Driftglass doesn't need permission to do anything.
No. Well, something. I need consent, at least. How's that?
Oh, yeah, you do.
And I always get it, too, which is awesome. But, feel however you want to feel. Feel however you want to feel. And we're not here to tell you what to think or what to feel. We hope we give you vocabulary and context that helps you understand what happened and why we're going through what we're going through. But angry or sad or grieving or numb or fuck it, I'm checked out, I'm moving to Scandinavia. We've had people tell us, I have to take care of myself. It's been fun. Yep. I got to leave. We understand. There's no, other than, using explosives or self-harm, I got nothing to say to anybody, but I wish I could give you all a very big Driftglass hug and tell you it was going to be okay, but I could do one, but not the other. It's going to be what it's going to be, and we are here for each other, and that's the important thing. So please don't listen to people who are telling you what to feel.
Yeah.
Just
or
go through what you're going through.
Permission.
Yeah, go through what you're going through.
Yeah.
And this is such a huge topic, the end of democracy in America, kind of a big deal. How did we get here and so forth? I'm not sure how to wrap my arms around other than to do what we do every week. So let's start with the basic formula for American politics for my entire adult life. And that is Democratic victories follow Republican catastrophes. Democratic victories always find their way into the public, into the realm of possibility once Republicans have fucked up really bad. Like, let's say Nixon was on the verge of being impeached or removed from office, having done heinous shit against the Constitution. Then, okay, we'll give a Democrat a try. Or let's say a Republican president leaves the economy shattered and turns it over to Bill Clinton to clean up for himself. Bill Clinton cleans it up, rolls up a nice surplus, and then the next president, Republican president, squanders that on tax cuts and wars, lies us into the wrong war.
The son of the previous Republican.
Yeah. Fucks up everything he touches, destroys, and is reelected in 2004.
Lies us into war.
Reelected. Manifestly unqualified liar who lied us into the wrong war, who pissed away a surplus compiled by Democrats. And he's manifestly unfit to be president and is reelected by, 5% or 4% or whatever.
Should we mention at this point, Driftglass, that this week is my 20th year?
Oh, yes.
Marks my 20th year in the blogosphere.
It is. 20th year. Yep.
Because George W. Bush was reelected.
Because he was reelected. A whole bunch of us.
2004, and 20 years later. Yeah, you have your 20th next March.
Yes, I do. But I started commenting November 2004.
Long before that, right. You were at the news blog.
On the lowdown. I started with Media Matters, I think. No, Talking Points Memo. Somebody pointed me towards Talking Points Memo, which led me to the news blog. And that's where I copped the NAM Drift Glass, and it's stuck with me ever since. Not that these are stories I promise not to tell. Ha ha ha. Little inside joke. But Democratic victories follow Republican catastrophes. Republicans fuck up real bad, and they always fuck up. They fuck up horribly every single time. George Bush, the only thing that gave the Obama candidacy a shot was George Bush presiding over the worst economic collapse in 74 years and failing to win a war that he lied us into and then fucked up real bad. And Hurricane Katrina and Terry Schiavo and all that. So, okay, we'll give a Democrat a chance. So Barack Obama cleans all that shit up, gets everything back up and running. Republicans try to sabotage him every fucking inch of the way. He does a good job. He doesn't do a great job. He makes a critical mistake in trusting Republicans, which you should never, ever, ever do because Republicans are awful monsters and you should never trust them. But he does a pretty good job. And he's rewarded. Democrats are rewarded for saving the fucking economy, saving the auto industry, et cetera, with Donald Trump, who inherits the Barack Obama successes, drives them into the ground, fucks up everything he touches, gets 400,000 Americans killed, and so on and so forth. And he's so fucking awful that once again the public is willing to give a Democrat a chance. So they give Biden a chance. And Biden cleans up his mess. The economy's coming back. Inflation is down. It's a miracle economy. And now it's time to throw the Dems out again and let Republicans fuck things up again. Because Republican victories always follow Democratic successes. Once the Democrats have been successful, once they've done good things, once they've accomplished the mission, once they've straightened up the Republican mess, that narrow band of undecided swing voting assholes in the middle decide, well, it's time for divided government again. It's time for the other party to have a chance. And they hand it over to manifestly unfit fascist scumbags who will destroy it. Donald Trump will destroy the economy. He will fuck up things so badly you won't be able to believe it. And then maybe once the rubble is cleared and once the smoke has thinned, they'll give the Democrats a chance again. But you know what? Not a Democratic woman. Oh, no. Can't have that. Never again. That's the lesson people are going to learn.
Not in my lifetime. That's not going to happen.
That's not the lesson we learned. That's not the lesson we want to learn. But it's very clear that the majority of this country are fucking assholes or misogynists or they're racist or they're a combination of all these things.
Or they're traitors to their gender.
Yeah. Or they're dumbasses. They're just fucking morons. Yeah. But that coalition of the bigoted, the stupid, the misogynist, et cetera, that's the Republican Party. And we've been talking about that, 14 years now, right? So, anyway.
I am not associated in any way with the white evangelical movement, but boy, did they turn out for Trump.
They did. Because he's Jesus.
And fuck all of them.
Yeah, fuck all of them.
Fuck every single one of them.
Mm-hmm. That's how we feel. In case some really successful podcasters are wondering,
I'm making it clear
about our feels. We're very tragic, heartbroken. We cried. We got sick. We couldn't sleep. I'm exhausted. I know my wife is exhausted.
Yeah. Hardly eating.
But you know what? In a very real way, not terribly surprised.
No.
Surprised at the margins because we thought Kamala Harris was going to win. We hoped she was going to win. We didn't bet the house she was going to win because it was always going to be close. But we knew what Republicans were. We knew what Republicans were. And we knew that they were gathering strength, that they were doing fine, that the people who were hanging on to them didn't give a shit about anything. They didn't care about anything except hurting Democrats and making liberals cry. So,
Now, getting back to a week ago.
Right. Mm-hmm.
To all of us who worked so hard.
Yep.
And we had one listener who went from New Jersey into Pennsylvania on the bus every weekend.
Yep.
And wrote us about it.
Yep.
Full buses of people, busloads of people from Manhattan, from New Jersey, going in and canvassing in Pennsylvania. Worked so hard.
Mm-hmm.
All of us who worked hard. No one could have asked more of us than we gave. Kamala Harris ran the best campaign, raised $1 billion. She did nothing wrong. And where the Harris campaign spent a ton of money, his gains were small. It's in red states and in big Dem states where ads would have been wasted. His gains were large.
Yep. And the thing is, All that hard work, all that money, all that time, all that passion, all that joy, all that effort didn't budge the fascists one single inch.
Right. Or
I'm
the
not gonna say-
misogynist. The misogyny in this country is unbelievable.
I'm not going to say it didn't make a difference, because it did, because it showed me what our side is. It showed the world our heart. And our heart is good, and we want good things for this country. And
I'm proud of that.
I'm terribly proud of that. I'm proud of the fight we had. I'm heartbroken we lost.
Yeah.
But I'm not ashamed of stepping into the arena, and I'm not ashamed of anything that we did to try to make it possible for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to win. So with all that in mind, I'm going to quote some people now. Well, one person in particular, a local boy who made very good. I'm going to bring Abraham Lincoln into this conversation. Specifically, this is from Lincoln's December 1862 annual address to Congress, which he delivered a month before he signed the Emancipation Proclamation into law. It's not the whole thing. The whole thing runs like 8,500 words. And even for me, it's TLDR. Sorry, Lincoln. Just too long. Didn't read. But this is the important passage, or the one I wanted to read today. It's very short. Quote, and I'm sure you've all heard it before because you're all good patriotic people. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise to the occasion. As our case is new, so must we think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves, and then we shall save our country. One thing we learned, this is not Lincoln talking, it's me, is that how politics works in this country now is something we must think differently about. Because having run a nearly perfect campaign against a manifestly incompetent, unqualified monster and not succeeded, something has changed forever in our politics. Back to Lincoln. Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. We of this Congress and this administration will be remembered in spite of ourselves. No personal significance or insignificance can spare one or another of us. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. Unquote. That's Lincoln.
I want to say that again. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation.
Yeah.
This felt like Hitler took Paris.
Yeah.
And that is terrifying and horrible and temporary.
Yeah.
And we have to treasure young voters. I know there were a lot of young men who voted Trump. It wasn't anything like the number of evangelicals in Gen Z who turned out, or Gen X that turned out for Trump.
Yeah. Fuck them all.
And I want to let everyone know what my dad said, because I called him at 5 a.m. because I knew he was up and sobbing and having trouble breathing, frankly. And he said, Fran, you will survive this. He will not.
Yeah, that's true.
So Simon Rosenberg at Hopium Chronicles, who really has egg on his face. I'm, sorry to shit on the guy who was so optimistic, but honest to God. But look, we agree with him here. He wrote a post-election post, and he said, to me, this election means two things. We may have to start running noisy, spectacle-filled campaigns in every state, every election cycle, or expect drop-off underperformance.
Yep.
To which I would add, and you need to run a guy.
Yeah. Sorry. White guy. Preferably a white guy.
White guy, Christian guy. Yeah, I'm going to say it. I don't think Shapiro has a chance. And that makes me sad.
Yeah.
All of it makes me sad.
Yeah.
Harris should be our president.
By a lot.
We should be a multicultural democracy with representation at the highest office.
And she should have won 60% of the vote and the 310 electoral
votes.
Yeah.
Because that's the country we should be.
Yeah. But we're not.
And we're not.
We're not. And we're nowhere near that country.
Yeah. And going back to Rosenberg, and this just makes us sigh a little bit. We have to build a far better permanent center-left based media ecosystem to compete with what the right has built. As powerful as the right's propaganda effort has been, it got more powerful with the addition of Twitter this year and the rightward movement of some legacy media. It will become more powerful still when Trump is back in the White House, there is great urgency to this work. We have a loudness problem on our side that simply must be addressed strategically across the entire party, in every state, and across the country. Our muscular campaigns allow us to close the info and loudness gap with the right every 2 years. And while our rigorous targeting allows us to concentrate our firepower and be competitive, we have to do more to be competitive and win the national conversation every day. Something all of our hyper-targeting of media markets and narrow, persuadable groups doesn't do for us. We have to be speaking every day to all parts of our coalition and not just a handful of swing voters and their concerns in a few battleground states. For if we don't do this, our campaigns will end up always playing defense in a right-constructed frame that, among other things, discourages us from talking about all the good we do as a party. For right-adjacent groups never believe any of that. All they know is the bad. High inflation, transgender nonsense, the border, crime. And thus the campaign and data ecosystem tells us not to even try to challenge it. It's too baked in. Over time, this means we never get to make the case for us, which is one reason why no one knows all the good Biden-Harris had done. For right-adjacent swing voters don't believe it. And thus, even though our economy today is arguably stronger than it has been in 60 years, we spent the general election talking about the harms of inflation rather than our success in getting to the other side of it and orchestrating a soft landing.
Yeah.
Unquote.
Yeah.
And that's because of Fox and Sinclair and Newsmax and Hate Radio.
And Spotify, frankly.
And Spotify.
And Facebook and Twitter and all the
my
rest
TV
of it.
husband, Ely Mastal, said, where's our Joe Rogan? And I replied a couple times, Hal Sparks.
Hal Sparks. Hal Sparks could do this
He's on
standing on
all
his
the
head.
time on YouTube. He's not on. He needs to be, I know, asking him to do one more thing. He's on for hours, and hours. He was on for 24 hours.
We were on with him, by the way.
We were on with him. And Carolee at Crooks and Liars was also on with him.
Everyone
He
was on with
invited as many people as he could get to come on.
It was the, I think I said this last week. We were in the 2 a.m. slot of the Jerry Lewis telethon. We were
We had
a great
2
time. We had a great time.
Yeah.
It was, I know, but as far as celebrity goes, that's where you put Senior Wences.
We were not the important people there. I understand.
But he invited us. That's the thing.
Yeah.
He invited us to that table, and we took his invitation, and we had a great time. We like Hal, and Hal's been on this podcast before.
Yeah.
There is a crying need, as I told you earlier today, for, I'm mispronouncing it, what Afghanistan's called a Loya Jirga, a meeting of the tribes. That there's all these little and not so little and large podcast groups and network groups and communication areas that don't talk to each other. And there was a thing a million years ago called Bloggerel Amnesty Day.
Oh, God.
And that was the day that all the, this is a million years ago, that all the A-list bloggers, or a handful of them, decided they didn't want to deal with B-list and C-list bloggers anymore.
Yeah.
Thus violating the whole concept of the blogosphere.
The entire ethos.
Which was, you look up and link down. You bring along people.
To be here. Right.
And the idea was, nope, there's 10 of us and that's enough. And everyone else can just go fuck themselves. We're going to link to each other and among each other, and everyone else, sorry, there's ad revenue at stake. And so we can't include the little guys, the littler guys, or you, people like you and me.
No one except for Mike Finnegan, the late Mike Finnegan, worked harder to bring up small blogs than I did.
Yeah. Oh, you were the queen of that.
Yeah.
And and eventually they got shamed into doing otherwise, or slightly doing otherwise, or whatever. But the point being, the ethos that we are all in this together fell apart really fast once there was money involved.
Yep.
And right now there are all these silos, mostly very large and mostly coastal, who do not talk to people in the Midwest, who do not talk about people in the Midwest other than in those people in the interior.
Or the South. Yeah.
Who are not communicating with each other or with us. And there's a lot of us out here. And it would be a very fine thing if we all got together and sort of got our messages clear and started delivering them on a regular basis. Now, two things with that very long quote from Simon Rosenberg. One is our loudness problem. You know what? B-list and C-list and even A-list bloggers never had a problem with was loudness, ever. The problem with loudness on the Democratic side, and Barack Obama found this out real quick, is the minute you raise your voice, the tone police show up and go, you can't say that. How dare you? Don't you realize if you raise your voice at all, if you act shrill at all, if you say those people at all, if you point the facts out that make people uncomfortable at all, you'll make America unhappy and strange and weird and feel bad. People don't like that. No, you don't like that. You want a nice, soft, even tone, David Brooks tapioca message. And the idea of shouting your accomplishments from the rooftops violates that clubby beltway attitude. So fuck that. We need to be much louder than we are now and with a much bigger megaphone. And number two, this sort of relates to that, is this nonsense about us talking about the harms of inflation. The reason we were talking about the harms of inflation is all of our friends, especially on the right, kept lecturing us that you can't tell swing voters things that they feel aren't true, because then you'll hurt their feelings. You can't go around telling them that inflation is coming down.
Counter the vibe feeling.
Don't you? Right. You're insulting them. You're alienating them by telling them the stupid shit they believe is stupid or wrong or factually incorrect. You have to sort of, I agree with you, man. Inflation is bad, and I'm right there with you. I feel your pain. And to me, telling voters, swing voters, dumbass voters who can't be bothered to read a fucking thing, that the economy really is as bad as you feel in your little heart because you can't. Because eggs were $5 for a year, and that's Joe Biden's fault. It wasn't bird flu. It wasn't the pandemic. It was Joe Biden pushing the inflation button on his desk. To me, going along with that bullshit just because Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough say you have to is like, okay, then we'll have to agree with the same people that they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats. Because
the same thing.
You can't tell them that's not happening because it might hurt their feelings. It's all a fucking
lie.
It's all a lie. So, but you can't hurt their feelings by being too loud or telling them true things. Hey, Driftglass, do you remember there was one time during this campaign where a reporter was talking to a Republican on his own boat in Fort Lauderdale? Yeah. And it had the Trump flags. Yeah. What's your number one issue? Oh, the economy. The economy, man. And prices and the economy and inflation. And he's like, and the reporter said, you're standing on a boat that you own in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Right. And you seem to be doing okay. Well, I think eggs are too expensive. Right. Really? Well, okay then. And that's all we have time for. Okay. Right. Well, that's great. And what we can't seem to understand, I mean, we understand it. A lot of the people we talk to, the people who listen to us, the people we listen to seem to understand this. But above our level, the big funders of ads, the people who write big checks for ads once every cycle, the celebrities who show up once every cycle to do a concert and an ad, which are all great, which are all terrific. Harrison Ford doing a black and white ad for Kamala Harris was awesome. It was a great ad. But here's the problem. Through their huge media network of radio and television and podcasts and newsletters and on and on and on and on and so forth forever, the right is essentially running a political campaign all day, every day, year after year after year after year. And we are running campaigns 3 months out of every 2 years. Every 2 years. Where we just rush into the void and say, oh, but here's the thing. No. The only way to beat this is to match them punch for punch. And the thing is, our secret weapon is we actually have the truth on our side. Now, I know the truth doesn't matter to pundits. The truth doesn't matter to Politico. It doesn't matter to people who work apparently at the fucking New York Times. It's just the horse race. It's a lie. How is the lie working? Is the lie working well? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? And that's the only way we're out of this. Now, I had a moment where I watched a little bit of Morning Joe on MSNBC, which is currently under embargo in our house. But I snuck out because I wanted to watch, because there's no liberal media, right? So I'm watching these people for 10 minutes, something I do not recommend. It is bad for your health. MSNBC is not our friend. But I was there in time to see Simone Sanders Townsend put Donnie Deutsch in his place. And that was rewarding. Yep. I do not have an exact transcript, but I watched carefully. And Donnie Deutsch came out with the tiredest, oldest, most despicable, toxic beltway lie there is. That somehow Kamala Harris failed because she should have been more centrist. You know, she wasn't centrist enough. And if she'd just been more centrist. And Ms. Sanders Townsend asked him, Donnie, what exactly do you mean by centrist? And you could just hear people in the studio just crapping themselves because you're never supposed to ask that question. You are never supposed to ask specifically what it is that you want her to say. And she said, do you mean trans people? Are you talking about trans people? Is that what we're talking about? And she says, I don't want to put you make you uncomfortable, put you on the spot, but is this what we're talking about? And that scared the crap out of him. He backpedaled faster. He looked like Michael Jackson moonwalking away from the audience.
Yeah.
He just said, no. I didn't mean any specific issue or issues. I just meant, be more centrist-y, do more centrist stuff. And Jesus Christ, there it is. I don't want to talk about any specific issue because you're on the right side of every fucking issue. I just want to bitch that you're not doing a thing that I can't define or describe and that actually won't do you any good because then we'll just move the goalposts.
Yeah.
So fuck you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing about that interview, well, I'm going to move on because there's other stuff to talk about. More from our so-called allies, and this is Linda Chavez. We got to talk about her.
Yeah.
And this was related to trans people.
Oh, yeah.
She was over at the Bulwark warning that what Harris needed to do and had failed to do was engineer some sort of Sister Souljah moment to distance herself from trans people, who Americans find icky.
Yeah. It's not a lot. It's not a lot of people, but Americans...
Maybe she should have gone on RuPaul's Drag Race and punched one of the contestants.
That would do it. According to this theory, this totally discredited bullshit theory that for the left to win, for Democrats to win, you need to go find somebody that Americans find icky and beat them up in public. And then you'll win the love of the bros, the fascist bros. They'll go, hey, maybe she punches trans people like I do. And that's cool. And so she can hang with us. Now,
I got to say, I lived in Alabama for 14 years. All three of my kids were born in Alabama.
Uh-huh.
Those Alabamian white ladies who go to Baptist church on Sunday all watch RuPaul's Drag Race.
Of course they do.
They all watch Ellen. They all watched Ellen back in the day,
that's
knowing
harmless.
She was a lesbian.
That's on TV and it's harmless.
That's on TV and it's harmart and it's fun and it's fashion
fun.
And it's
but when
dancing.
It's in your town, when there's a bar in your town, when there's a person on the street, then it becomes icky. We start talking about what that actually means, what people actually are doing. That's icky. I don't want to take they're just in costume. That's why I think Halloween is the greatest holiday in America. Because you get to dress up however you want and behave however you like, as long as you don't act like an asshole. America should be more like that. Now, this week, it was also MSNBC's own Tim Miller saying that on his podcast, going forward, really what Democrats need to do is sort of hang out and vibe more with the fascist bros, If we ever want, because offering them stuff isn't going to work. We all the cool, great policy stuff. Oh, I agree with that. There's a ton of policy, but they don't want that. They want a fucking demagogue. That's their brain space. That's who they are. Excuse me. So if we ever want them to vote for Democrats, swing back to Democrats, you got to hang with them. You got to be around them. You got to go to their bars and rub elbows with these guys and reassure them. And this is almost an exact quote that we don't use. I don't use pronouns either. I'm not hung up about pronouns. And you know what? I don't say Latinx either, because then you'll win them over to your side and eventually something. Because, they think those things are weak or pussy or whatever. They're woke. And I got to thinking about that. I said, you know what, Tim? Because I know you listen to this podcast, Tim. You know what the fascist bros really think is icky, terrible, a blight on America? The gays. They really fucking hate the gays. And I wonder, to save the republic, because that's what this is all about, to save the republic, would you tell your fascist bro friends in the fascist places you want us to hang out with and vibe with that they're really right about the gays? They got some good points. Maybe gay marriage is a bad idea. Maybe that's too icky for Americans to contemplate. Maybe men having sex with men is just horrifying, and we shouldn't discuss that at all. Maybe you should tell them that gay is a choice. It's not who you're born. You weren't born that way. It's a choice you've chosen to, and you realize it offends them, and you'd like to apologize for that. Maybe Sarah Longwell could do that too, because she's a lesbian, and she has a wife. I believe she has kids, and that's a horrible affront to the fascist bros who you want us to vibe with and connect with and talk with on some level that we can both get down and, just hang out, let our hair down, which I can't do because I'm bald, but you know how that goes. So how do you feel about that, Tim? You feel game for it? I'd love to see you try. Love to see you go down that road and see how you like it. Because you're telling us that we need to bend over and tell fascists that they're not really so bad. They're not really so awful. That we have a lot in common. And you know what?
And that's going to win them over. He's supposed to be the smart pollster type of person.
And it's never to them to change. Even though you'll acknowledge that they're awful fucking people, it's never to them to change. And I will say one more thing on local Facebook today. The local fascists who were thrilled that Donald Trump won or celebrating like crazy are now like, come on, we just see things differently. We can still be friends, right? We can all still be friends, right? I mean, it's because they don't think anything about what they've done is wrong. They see it as, defending that one woman is freaking out about this is Jesus's will, God's will. Thank God our prayers are answered. Donald Trump is president. Jesus delivered Donald Trump to us. And now that we've won, we can all still be pals, right? Because we just think different thoughts. It's not like we're discriminating, not that we don't dislike each other. I said, no, dude, I dislike you. You're a fascist. You voted for a monster to take away rights from people I love. How do you dare think I could ever be your friend again? So, Tim, answer that question for me. How far are you willing to go to repudiate your identity to make a bunch of fascists
your lifestyle,
happy?
Your identity.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, I'll hang up and wait for my answer. How's that?
I remembered what the other thing Donnie Deutsch said on Morning Joe. He said, it's going to be okay.
No,
it's like, apparently you don't have a kid with autism.
For you, it's going to be okay.
Apparently you have investments up the wazoo and are a white guy in New York City. And you're going to get your tax cut. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of pundits out there have been and will continue to sell snake oil cures for the cancer that is killing our country. It'll all be in the service of avoiding, and I mean this seriously, avoiding conversations about what the real problems are. Money in politics, the collapse of the legacy media, pushing to the right, a hugely well-funded conservative media, which brainwashes people every day. The non-existent liberal media, Russian interference. Why aren't we still talking about bomb threats at election sites?
Because Trump won.
Russian interference in our elections, folks. The enemy is Putin. And he is a worse villain than Trump.
Yes, he is.
It's just that Trump is closer.
And Trump works for him. And so as a result of all that, you have a Republican voting base that are brain dead. And apparently forever. Yep.
Until their school loses funding for autism.
And what happened? Where's a liberal I can find to blame for this?
Right.
And as regarding that last thing, I got to say it's weird hearing people like MSNBC and Atlantic's Tom Nichols, who blocks me for saying things like this.
He blocks you for saying things that he said this week.
That he now agrees with because he didn't want to think they were true. And I was uppity and I was, you know what I was doing, Blue Gal? I was being loud. Loud.
Oh, man.
I was being loud in public about things that are true. And that makes people like that very uncomfortable. But watching him slowly catch up in his paid gig at MSNBC and his paid gig at The Atlantic and the Bulwark podcast where he goes to, and he went this very day, I believe, to repeat his column from The Atlantic for an even larger audience, slowly catching up to where liberals have been all along. That the problem with the Republican Party is it's full of Republicans. And it's finally sunk in that, oh shit, these people can't be reached, can they? They're just fucking brain dead. Nothing reaches them. They're immune to reason. These people with $1 million houses or $500,000 houses and big trucks bitching about the price of eggs as if that affects them. And it happened 1 year and it affects them for the rest of their life. That's why I have to go vote for a fucking fascist. No, you're voting for the fucking fascist because you're a fucking fascist. And at some point, this has reached the frontal cortex of Tom Nichols. And now he writes about it for money for The Atlantic. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
if you'd rather take the day off, just go steal some of my columns from 2005. You'll find all the verbs and adjectives there, and you're welcome to them. You don't even have to give me credit for it because nobody gives credits to liberals for anything.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, we have reached the part of this gruesome drama where, for a brief period, the media pretends to do some soul searching. And they aren't really soul searching. Because corporations, this is just a fact, corporations don't have souls.
It's a fact of metaphysics.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whatever they come up with on their "we'll do better next time" never lasts.
Never.
I have noticed, I mean, this has been a huge sea change for the moment, that the legacy media is finally ready to entertain the idea that maybe the problem is the voters.
And that will last.
And the reason they are saying that, I believe, is money.
And that will
because
last 5
Kamala
minutes.
Harris raised $1 billion.
And that will last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's a sea change. The sea, however, is 1 inch deep.
Right.
And it will change almost immediately.
Right.
This is from CNN's Brian Stelter. Trump's return to power raises serious questions about media's credibility, unquote. You're kidding me.
I know.
Oh, my God. I read the headline. I thought, oh, my hallelujah. The second coming of the Lord. And then I remember, they did this for about 5 minutes after the Iraq war went south and everything went horribly wrong. And about 2 minutes after the But Her email campaign of 2016, it never lasts. It never lasts. And then I read the rest of the article. And that's when I just started laughing because it's fucking hilarious. Because Stelter goes on to stroke his chin and opine that, yes, conservatives seem to have lost faith with the mainstream media. Which is fucking hilarious. Really? Your media insider Brian Stelter has noticed that the conservatives had a problem? Like, want you all dead? Wouldn't hesitate to round you all up and put you in camps? You finally noticed that? Golly, there's some late-breaking news.
Yeah, seriously.
Quote, in the hours after Trump won re-election Tuesday, some of his loyalists asserted that his victory is a complete repudiation of the news media. For a time on a Wednesday morning, the Federalist's lead headline was not about Trump. It was about the, quote, corporate media industrial complex being 2024's biggest loser. Legacy media is officially dead, the Daily Wire podcaster Matt Walsh wrote on X overnight. Their ability to set the narrative has been destroyed. And this is the point at which I started laughing. You mean the sane washing of Donald Trump and that horniness, the absolute horniness you could feel after his MSG rally and after he was destroyed by Kamala Harris. You could feel them going, please someone say something we can exploit. And then Joe Biden stuttered and said something that wasn't quite correct or didn't come out right. And you could hear them going, thank God, thank God. Yeah. Now we can both sides the shit out of this. Because that's their fucking policy. That's who they are. And so the idea that they're setting the agenda is just, it's just amazing. Back to Matt Walsh on X. Trump declared war on the media in 2016. Tonight, he vanquished them completely. They will never be relevant again. No, as our friend Steve says, the legacy media died. It was suicide.
Yep.
Back to Mr. Stelter. Breaking news again. Stelter. That's wishful thinking on Walsh's part. Tuesday's marathon election coverage was a testament to the media's relevance. No, it wasn't. It was reading poll numbers and election results on TV, which a monkey could be trained to do. Anyway, back to the article. But the point is that many Trump voters share his wish. They believe the national news media is a big part of what ails America. Not only do they distrust what they read, they often don't read it in the first place. Can anything be done to change that? Unquote. I don't know. Bend over further, grab your ankles harder. It never occurs to them that the legacy media is already 3/4 in the tank to conservatives. And the reason for that is, and that they're just fucking over liberals right and left. And the reason for that is we don't have a big, loud, noisy megaphone like Matt Walsh has, like the Federalist has, like Fox has, to scream at the legacy media every time they cross us and make them afraid of us.
Yeah,
make them feel professionally terrified to cross us. And so Yeah, I agree with everything they said in reverse. Yes, the
Mhm.
legacy media is the problem. Yes, they're disaster. Because they're in the corner of people like Trump, because they bend to authoritarians, not because of whatever the fuck Matt Walsh thinks of them. Now, take a deep breath. We're going to change the subject just a little bit to other people who are, I guess, showing some of their true colors. You may have noticed, some of you who are still on social media, that 2024 Harris endorser, Bernie Sanders, has reverted to 2016 primary Bernie Sanders, the all war is class war Bernie Sanders. Quote, this is Bernie Sanders talking. I'll do it in my Bernie voice the best I can. It should come as no great surprise that a Democratic Party which has abandoned working class people would find that working class has abandoned them. While the Democratic leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and want change, and they're right, unquote. And you know who not only agrees 100% with 2016 Bernie Sanders revisited, but believes that Bernie Sanders should be punished for not getting back in line earlier? The first group is an outfit called People for Jill Stein.
Yeah.
Quote,
Yeah.
I gotta say, as leftists, Bernie shouldn't deserve any of our praise or credit for this statement. Sure, by all accounts, it looks like a good statement that correctly identifies what ails the Democratic Party and asks for some real soul searching, unquote. So not good enough to please the friends of Jill Stein there, Bernie. And the second person who thinks too little too late is a guy named Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Quote, sadly late, unquote.
Yep. Now, look, I'm not here to shit on Bernie Sanders. His timing is way off.
Yeah.
And from a policy perspective, he's wrong. Most of Biden's legislative accomplishments benefited the working class. And the reality for Dems is that doing things for working class people does not translate into electoral benefits ever. I remember this. And this is a fact that Bernie Sanders knows full well.
Of course he
the
does.
Biden administration flooded West Virginia with federal money. It never makes a dent in boneheads that one party helps and one party hurts. And I wonder why that is.
I wonder why that is too, Blue Gal.
Now, Jared Ryan Sears on social media wrote this list, and it's a good list. Quote, unions are the strongest they've been in decades. Let's not forget that Joe Biden's the first president to walk a picket line. Wages among the lowest earners grew the fastest under Biden. The child tax credit was expanded, a minimum corporate tax was enacted, a tax on stock buybacks was added, high inflation was brought down to normal levels without a recession. That is an economic miracle. And I don't expect working class, non-college educated people to understand that. But the messaging on that from the mainstream media was non-existent.
It was, economy's bad, people feel it's bad, inflation bad.
Vibe,
Biden.
Millions of jobs were created in the past 4 years. Unemployment has remained low. Manufacturing returned to the United States. We've got the battery plants in Illinois to prove it. Prescription drug prices were lowered. Insulin, guys. More Americans have health care than ever before. Billions were given to student debt relief in spite of Republican, bullshittery about that.
Suing to try to make that stop.
Suing to stop it.
Successful in some cases. And what happened when they were successful? Biden broke his promise.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And the American Rescue Plan got Americans back to work, covered COBRA payments, and even directly gave Americans money, unquote.
Yeah.
I interrupted that list a little bit with my own editorialism, but
Yeah, but it's useful to have this in your back pocket.
Yeah.
Not that it will change any minds, but it's useful to remind people.
That's the point. That's the point. West Virginia, it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
The amount that of help they got.
And they don't want it. Oh, they want the money. They want the help.
They want the money. They want the help.
What was the name of the Alpha House? The HBO show that opens with Bill Murray getting arrested.
Yes, right.
And there's a bowl on the table with flag pins in it, so nobody forgets their flag.
Pick one to put on for the day. Yes.
And I forget which Republican I want to say John Goodman, I might be wrong about that, visits his hometown for the first time in a long time
Yes, right,
and hangs
right.
out. And what he sees are people mooching off the federal government, old guys retired with fixed incomes who are doing fine, sitting around the barbershop bitching about the government, bitching
Yep.
about the moochers, bitching about the welfare queens. And he's just like, these are my people. Fuck me. These are the
and
people.
then talking about how they on their tobacco farm that they own,
Right.
and they are obviously millionaires sitting on paper, sitting in the barbershop talking to one another,
Bitching about the government doesn't do nothing for me.
bitching about illegals.
Yeah.
And then saying, "Oh yeah, well, how's the crop coming in? Oh, fine. Thank God I was able to find some illegals
Yeah.
to
And subsidies.
to pick
Don't
my
forget the
tobacco
subsidies.
harvest."
Right.
Yeah.
So the Biden administration, everyone but us is going to forget this. Everybody but us good liberals is going to forget this. Inherited a pandemic, a legitimate immigration crisis, a collapsing global economy, and high inflation, and managed to not only address all of those issues despite Republican opposition and obstruction, but accomplished much more as well. So continuing to act like Democrats have abandoned the working class as of right now is ridiculous on its face, is absurd, is a lie as big as any lie that Donald Trump tells. Biden has done more for unions and the working class than any president since FDR, maybe LBJ. But it's amazing what he has been able to accomplish with no margin for error and no support from the right. And rebuilt American manufacturing. That's my goddamn wheelhouse. That's the area where I did workforce development for 10 years. And I know what Biden has done for this country. And Bernie, as both a truly active Harris surrogate as well as the chairman
And to his credit, yes,
to his credit, up until she lost, an active Harris surrogate and chairman of the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. He knows this.
Yes,
he's setting himself up as the left flank opposition with key words for the Jill Stein crowd.
Yeah, he's marketing himself as champion of the working class in Trump 2.
And he's pushing himself off not against Donald Trump, but against the Democratic Party. Because he joins.
And this is where I part ways with RFK Jr. It wasn't too late. It was way too soon for him to do this.
Well, and it's, it's Bernie the, am I an independent this week or am I Democrat this week? Well, it depends on which party I want to run in. And I get that. And Bernie's pragmatic and he's done great work. And he did very similar stuff with Affordable Care Act. He held up the Affordable Care Act approval for legitimate medical facilities for his constituents. He wanted that in the bill. So he knows how to play politics and he's been a good sport. But goddamn, man, wait until after the funeral and the wake and the eulogy and the bunting is down.
Deeply, deeply mourning. Yeah.
Before you say Democrats abandon the working class and they deserve this.
Which is bullshit. Which is just absolutely categorically untrue. So,
Of course, Bernie's kind of an old guy, too. So, you know.
And it's okay that his timing's a little off. I mean, I got that. But, now, man.
Speaking of trashing
it was not
Democrats,
a good look.
But speaking of trashing Democrats, you know who loves trashing Democrats? Joe Scarborough. Any opportunity he can take to trash Democrats, because he's a Republican. He's always going to be a Republican. The wiring is in his brain. He's a big, loud, brash, obnoxious asshole with his own 4-hour time block on liberal MSNBC.
And I guess he's not part of the resistance anymore.
Well, he's just looking for the next move. He's looking for his next page. I don't know what he's up. But he went on this long, again, don't watch MSNBC. Don't watch Joe Scarborough. It's bad for your health. It'll make all your hair fall out. Just look at me. Look at my example. You don't want this to happen to you. And he went on this long tear about how unpopular Joe Biden was. Oh my God, he's so unpopular. Everybody hates 38, low approval rating, lower than Trump's. Oh my God. This albatross around the neck of the Democratic Party. And I don't know if this is scripted or not. Sometimes they're not. But Mika Brzezinski took a pause in the middle of this rant and then turned to Eugene Robinson and asked, Eugene, did Joe Biden have a successful presidency or not? And Robinson said, well, yes, he did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Biden has done more for unions and the working class than any president since FDR and rebuilt manufacturing. So why is everything always bad news for Democrats? Why is it always open season on Democrats? So let's all go down the list. Just a few of the excuses that we've heard over the last, I don't know, year and a half about why the numbers aren't moving. Number one, it's the Democrats not delivering for the working class. That's the problem. Except, of course, Democrats have delivered, especially during the pandemic, like crazy for the working class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, maybe inflation is the problem, Driftglass. And no, inflation was a global post-pandemic problem. And the Biden administration, as I said earlier, enacted a miracle. They coped with it better than any other nation in this planet. Also, total unemployment is at historic lows. Job creation is at historic highs.
Well, so if it's not people's fee-fees about, imaginary inflation problem, which was a problem for everybody on planet Earth for a while, then it must be Biden's age that's the problem, right? It must be Biden's age, except Biden dropped out and was replaced by a young, vigorous, talented, smart woman who ran a nearly perfect campaign. And Trump, on the other hand, is nearly as old as Biden and clearly losing his fucking mind, which is apparently is not an issue for the same people who are bitching that Biden's age is the reason that his popularity is so low.
Because Trump's a vessel, Driftglass.
He's a vessel
Trump is
for
a
Jesus.
vessel.
He's a vessel for Jesus. That's right.
Well, how about the aforementioned problem of Kamala Harris not being centrist enough? That must be the problem, Driftglass.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Except that Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, nearly every national security expert, most of Trump's former cabinet, all endorsed her.
Yeah. And some of that, much to my chagrin, which, I understand how politics works, but honestly, you can't get more centristy than she ran. So that can't be it. It must be all those trans prison surgeries that are going on by the thousands. Wait a minute. I'm just checking my notes here. Yeah, there's only been two of them in the United States, two of them. So
Under
the problem,
a Trump program, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So the problem isn't those two surgeries that took place. It's the fact those two surgeries got repeated 30,000 times to an already susceptible audience.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Now, over the next few months, years, decades, America's savviest white pundits, and by the way, please listen to black women.
Yeah, please.
But the white pundits will try to tell you that for the want of 99 cents a dozen eggs, a kingdom was lost.
Uh-huh.
And this is also bullshit.
Just bullshit. It's just bullshit.
Believe it or not, even David French had to come to terms with how bad things are, talking about how the message that Dems are the devil is so deep inside conservative circles that it immunizes anything Trump does, no matter how insane. And for a lot of people, that means that Trump is virtually the second coming. He's that vessel.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because he attacks Democrats.
Right.
And the Democrat Party is the devil.
Right. And remember
what they've been taught.
And who was telling the base the Democratic Party is the face of pure evil and murders babies? Liz Cheney.
Liz Cheney. This
is not a recent fucking development. That was David French's point. He didn't point to Liz Cheney because we're going to build statues to her. She's the never Trump hero. She's the second coming. But up until January 6th, Liz Cheney was completely cool with reinforcing over and over again the same thing Newt Gingrich taught them 30 years ago.
Yep.
Always demonize them, always attack them, always call them welfare, always call them scum. Never stop attacking the left for being un-American.
They're anti-family.
Yeah.
Democrats are anti-family. Every time you come to a microphone, Democrats are anti-family.
And it worked.
Yeah.
Congratulations. It worked.
I want to talk for a minute about the gender gap, Driftglass.
Oh, God.
Because that's what this is.
Is this about our relationship?
Bullshit.
This isn't about our relationship?
About our relationship.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Why did Latino men break for Trump? The same reason white men broke for Trump. Because of macho culture. This was the Joe Rogan election. As one commenter mentioned on the socials, it's not but her emails, it's but she's female.
Yeah.
And this is the backlash against women's equality. They don't want it.
They don't want it.
And my sense is sadly that women are going to have to wait 40 or more years to lead the Democratic ticket, if ever.
Mm-hmm.
The first female president is going to be a Margaret Thatcher type Republican, probably a vice president whose president quite unexpectedly dies. And so she becomes president by accident.
Right.
And that's what'll break the glass ceiling.
Yep.
And I got to say, that's what Gerald Ford predicted in the 1970s, like 50 years ago. He said the first woman president would be when a male president dies. And that's because macho culture just won't have it.
No, women are supposed to make babies and cook
be in the
dinner
kitchen.
And be in the kitchen. That's their job. And anything that deviates from that, if they are trans women, that deviates from that. If they're gay men, that deviates from that. Yeah. If they're men who support those things, that anything that deviates from the woman's role as, and you can see this in J.D. Vance's attitude towards women, in Elon Musk building a fucking compound for his harem of broodmares. That this
Even though every single one of them wants their wife to work so they can have a nicer house.
Of course, but
in reality,
let's not say that. Let's not say.
But it can't be a career.
Well,
she can't be a lawyer. She can't have any power. She's got to work. Yeah, answering the phone someplace.
That's where facts interfere with Donnie Deutsch's sense of culture. It's culture.
Right. Exactly.
I don't want women working culturally because it makes me feel like my penis is going to fall off culturally. Then I'll be gay culturally. And that's bad for everyone. And that's just how things are.
Right.
And and because no amount of great public policy or empathy or giving New York Times interviews or promising bipartisanship or being more centrist is ever going to stop the party of Big Brother from blaming their gone-to-shit lives on Emmanuel Goldstein and screaming out their hatred for him every goddamn day. Yep. That's who they are. And that's who they're going to be until the last dog dies. And finally, sort of corollary to that, we learned this week that never-Trumpers are basically useless. They got a lot of money. They produced a lot of ads. They made a lot of noise. They made themselves present in every goddamn media, and they delivered nothing. I was on the Zoom call with Charlie Pierce, who was from Esquire, and
you were watching the Zoom call.
Yeah, I wasn't chatting with him. We're not allowed to chat with the celebrities, but he knew I was there. I knew he was there, and we talked a little bit by email afterwards. And he was dispirited, as we all are. But one thing he got real animated about was never-Trumpers basically now own MSNBC, and their media companies, the Bulwark and Lincoln Project, are treated with great deference. They're treated as if they're terribly influential and very important. I mean, in my opinion, obviously, and factually, important enough to displace people who weren't wrong about the right all along.
Right.
Instead, we're going to put people on who were wrong all along, but who lied. Who lied.
Or who lied for money before. Yeah.
But who now are slowly catching up to where the left was, because you can't admit the left was right, ever, under any circumstances, as this podcast has proven. And more importantly, they delivered basically nothing. This election, they did nothing for us. They made a lot of pretty ads. Again, as I called it in 2020 and 2016, they created, or they didn't exist in 2016. In 2020, this was Pornhub for liberals. I loved watching Harrison Ford black and white ad talking about the most important election of your life. And I loved watching it. There were great ads. There were lots of great ads. They made no difference at all. And about that,
well, the Harrison Ford ad was like 3 minutes before Election Day too.
Yeah.
So
but and not just them, but Kamala Harris had every celebrity except Moses on stage endorsing her, literally singing her praises. She had every major music star. She had celebrities. She had people with credibility. She had the entire, like I said, Trump's almost his entire cabinet. And none of it mattered. None of it made a fucking dent. In fact, Trump gained ground in every place that she didn't spend a ton of money. In Illinois, too. Illinois dropped. I mean, Illinois, the vote share for Democrats in Illinois dropped substantially this election. I mean, they won because we're a goddamn blue state, and we got J.B. Pritzker here. But
evangelicals in the red areas of Illinois turned out for Trump. Big time. Big time.
And so we need to disenthrall ourselves of our fantasies about politics as they were back in the 80s and 70s and 90s and learn this new game. And there are people out there who are really good at this new game. One of them is named Hal Sparks.
Yeah.
One of them is Brad Friedman. One of them is Digby. One of them is Fran Bluegal. And I'm not bad at it myself. There's lots of people out there who could do the job. It's just that the people who are gatekeeping us on the coasts don't want to hear from us because the things we have to say are not things they want to hear. Anyway, on with the news roundup.
Let's do a news roundup, Drift Class. The Bidening continues for 59 more days. I wish he would step down and let Kamala Harris be president for 59 days.
I do. If
I'm
only.
going to say that.
If only to screw up the merch.
Yeah, screw. That's what someone else said. All the 47 merch. Yeah. America elected the first convicted felon to serve as president of the United States. You know him. Twice impeached, 4 times indicted, once defeated former president, overcame 34 felony convictions, 88 criminal charges, accusations of insurrection as part of his attempt to overturn the 2020 election. By the way, white male violence is always excused and pardoned. Listen to black women.
Yeah, absolutely.
Civil lawsuit judgments totaling more than $500 million, allegations by nearly his entire first-term cabinet that he's unfit to serve, his openly fascist intentions, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, his failed response to the COVID-19 pandemic, inject bleach and shine a light up your ass, that led to more than 400,000 deaths from a virus he repeatedly claimed was going to disappear overnight. His repeated overt acts of racism, at least 26 credible public accusations of rape, kissing, and groping without consent, his promises to prosecute his political opponents, and the threats published in the Project 2025 agenda, which is on sale at the Mar-a-Lago gift shop. Don't let him tell you he doesn't know any of these people. He knows all of them. And so now he's the nation's 47th president. He's the second president. The first was Grover Cleveland in the 19th century to retake the White House after a re-election defeat. And at the age of 78, Trump is the oldest man ever elected president, breaking a record held by Joe Biden, whose mental competence Trump repeatedly savaged. And Trump's brain is melting.
It's mush. It's mush. And his followers don't care. Or they
because
don't see
he's a
it.
vessel.
Because he's a vessel.
He's a vessel.
This is from David Frum in The Atlantic, in an article in which he announced that he's no longer a Republican. Great, David. That's cool. You're no longer a Republican. You know, as a reporter asked Krusty the Clown when he announced he was quitting comedy. Why now, Krusty? Why not 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Why not 20 years? Oh, you were busy talking about Mushroom Cloud and Smoking Gun and hyping the second worst president in American history. That's right. But now he writes for The Atlantic because everyone writes for The Atlantic, Blue Gal. And here's what he had to say, and it's all true. I don't disagree with the words. Donald Trump has won and will become president for the second time. Those who voted for him will now celebrate their victory. The rest of us need to prepare to live in a different America. A country where millions of our fellow citizens voted for a president who knowingly promotes hatred and division, who lies blatantly, shamelessly every time he appears in public, who plotted to overturn an election in 2020 and had he not won, was planning to try again in 2024. Above all, we must learn to live in an America where an overwhelming number of our fellow citizens have chosen a president who holds the most fundamental values and traditions of our democracy, our Constitution, even our military, in contempt. And David, because I know you listen to this podcast too, we already learned on the left how to live in that country because we've been living in that country for a lot longer than you would care to admit.
Yep. Vice President Harris gave a hell of a concession speech. It was short, resolute, inspiring, and heartbreaking. And both of us cried when we heard it.
We did. It was beautiful. It was great.
You should go listen to it. And it brought to mind something I read in Sojourners magazine this week. And I really am to the point of breaking with a lot of church traditions because I'm just so pissed right now at the church umbrella that we're all supposed to share as Christians. And I just can't. I just can't.
I'm this close to saying if my church allows Republicans in the pews, I don't want any part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the Catholic Church has no problem excommunicating people and denying them communion.
Yeah.
If they're 1 inch off the fucking mark, or the conservatives are. Joe Biden was denied communion by folks. Our own bishop has no hesitation to do this. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be reciprocal at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just my opinion.
But Sojourners is a liberal magazine for liberal theologians and liberal pastors. and liberal people who try to live a life of faith. And they have a monthly column written by various theologians, and it is purported to be sermon notes that could be helpful to people writing sermons. There's, for each Sunday in the month, there's a little comment and some Bible verses. So it's supposed to be helpful. But this one caught my eye, and it is for December 18th. And this is written by an associate professor of New Testament at Columbia Theological Seminary in Georgia. His name is Raj Nadella. In 2020, wealthy white parents of students in Howard County, Maryland public schools opposed or failed to support a measure to integrate their schools across racial and economic divides. Many of these parents considered themselves progressive on social issues, but when faced with an option to desegregate the schools their children attended, they failed to translate progressive social ideals into a concrete commitment to justice. And just to back up for a moment, I went and researched this because I thought, okay, if these parents, if their argument is, I don't want my kid getting up at 5 a.m. to be bused 2 hours to school.
Yeah.
That is a legitimate thing to be concerned about. The longest bus ride that any child in this district would have had to take under the plan that they proposed was 2 miles. 2 miles.
Uh-huh.
But it was wealthy white parents and wealthy Asian parents who did not want to integrate the schools and have to go have their students mix with primarily Hispanic and Black students.
Working class.
Poor.
Yeah, poor.
Poor schools and these are liberals, right? So
No,
getting
not.
back to this,
They're
this
definitely not. Yeah.
But getting back to the Sojourner's sermon notes, if you will, Luke 3, which is about John the Baptist and his ministry, mentions many people going to the countryside to participate in John's movement of baptism. These were wealthy people who professed a commitment to justice and wanted to be a part of what John was stirring up. In my imagination, they snapped selfies with John and posted them on Instagram.
Yeah.
They wanted to be seen as hanging with the right crowd, wearing the right shirt, and committed to justice.
Virtue signaling.
All over the place. Rather than give them a P for participation, John promptly puts them on the spot, asking them to produce good fruit of their repentance. This is Luke 3, verse 9. He makes it clear that repentance and justice are never abstract ideas, but should always manifest themselves in concrete actions in one's own time and place. John invites people to, excuse me a minute.
Take a breath.
I'm so sorry.
Take a breath. It's okay, babe.
I am so sorry, guys.
It's all right. This is the time for this sort of thing.
Okay. John invites people to leverage the power they have, big or little, within their own spheres of influence to challenge oppressive structures and transform lived realities for those who are least protective and most vulnerable. My knitting guild, before the election, before all of this, made plans to knit hats for the homeless, which is a good use of yarn. I object in many ways. Sometimes they're really funny, but I object to yarn bombing. Wrapping a mailbox or wrapping a tree or whatever in yarn as a public display of craft and so forth. Knit hats for the homeless. Knit hats for school children who need them for the playground. At public schools. I also want to invite all of us. I put something up before the election to get people to go over to Donors Choose and pick a school from Springfield, Ohio,
Yeah.
where Trump and Vance had criminally lied about their community and elementary schools had bomb threats. And those elementary school teachers are asking for soap and toothbrushes for their students. Think about that. Public school teachers every day in these communities, in these Black and brown communities, need our help, and to find out in your community which schools are asking for that kind of help and help them. It's tax deductible, folks. Donors Choose sends you a receipt.
They do. And there are opportunities for this all over. You unless you live on an island by yourself, or you live in a very wealthy community that's surrounded by other wealthy communities, within a couple of miles of your house right now, there's a school where a teacher needs supplies, basic supplies,
boxes of Kleenex.
Stuff
hand
stuff like
sanitizer.
That.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So seriously, do something. It is, and this is what Kamala Harris told us to do. Get busy.
Get busy. There's work to be done.
Hard work. We like hard work.
Yeah, hard work is good work.
And the hard work is finding a place to help and help. Yeah. And that, as I said on my knitting podcast yesterday, is what keeps us sane.
Yeah. Well, and when we talked at the very top of the show, which was about 6 hours ago, as I recall, about none of it mattered. But it did matter because of the fight and the passion and the joy and the commitment. This is what we're talking about. Yep. There are things you can do right now that will make your community better, that will make children happier, that will feed them, that will keep them warm. And it doesn't cost a lot of money, and it costs a little bit of time. And the nonprofit that I'm sitting on the board of, we barely collect dues. But we do rotate our support a couple of bucks every time we can to the schools in our area. And they appreciate it. And they show up at our events and they thank us for it. And it makes us feel real good because, we showed up for the baptism, but we also did a little bit of good along the way. And those are the things you can do. And you know what? While you're there, you're building community. You are building community so the next time a monster runs for office, you can sit down with those people and say, you know me. You know my heart. You know what I do. You know how I care. You cannot support that person. They're bad for you. They're bad for what you believe in.
And they're bad for what we're working to do together.
Yeah.
Also, you're building up resilience. I know it doesn't feel that way right now, and I'm so sorry for breaking down like that. But seriously, every time you do something to help the less fortunate, to make the world a better place, you are inoculating all of us against the evils of this world.
Yeah. So it's dark. It's dark. Yeah. And
that's when you see the stars.
Yeah.
He said.
Yeah.
I know you're not there yet.
I'm not there yet, but I do post space nerd news at Crooks and Liars every time it's my turn to do Mike's Blog Roundup. So I'm a big space nut. And I appreciate the analogy, as tortured as it may be. Back to the news roundup. It's not good. I'll tell you that right now. So Special Counsel Jack Smith is preparing to drop the 2 federal criminal cases against Trump to comply with the longstanding Justice Department policy that a sitting president can't be prosecuted.
We don't talk about Israel-Palestinian stuff on this podcast.
No.
Because, again, I can't. I'll just start crying. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who's got to go, fired his defense minister while the world's attention was focused on the U.S. election. Yoav Gallant was one of the most vocal and prominent critics of Netanyahu's war strategy, was pushing for a ceasefire in exchange for a hostage release deal. Gallant's firing removed the main advocate for such a deal. Netanyahu has called for total victory in the war and rejected pressure domestically. Let me repeat that. He has resisted pressure domestically. There is a peace movement in Israel.
There is.
And from the U.S. to accept a ceasefire deal.
Yep.
And, Bibi's on the phone with Trump, and it's going to be the Gaza, Trump Tower, and casino. You'll be able to play the slots on the bones of children.
Yep.
That's what evangelicals voted for.
Yep. And the public square that used to be called Twitter is now a giant Nazi toilet run by a lunatic, ketamine-addicted madman. And so the exodus from Twitter continues apace. We get notes all the time. Got one today from a dear friend, says, I'm not there anymore. I quit. I'm done. He's not done doing good work. He's not done advocating. He's not moving to Mars. None of these people are quitting the fight.
Yeah.
But the arena has to change because Twitter is a shithole. And it's a shithole because Elon Musk bought it to turn it into a shithole in order to help Donald Trump get elected. That's why he did it. That's why he spent that money. That's why he bought it for $44 billion. Because as an investment to get Donald Trump back in the White House, it's a good investment.
Yeah.
And it worked.
And Driftglass and I are working on it.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of artwork over there that we've got to recover.
Yeah. And we're everywhere else. I've been on Threads now for 5 minutes and I'm learning. I'm a newbie on Threads. I'm not sure how anything works. So, but we're
are you
right there with
Driftglass
you.
on Thread? Are you at Driftglass
so.
or you? Yeah.
I think so.
I'm at
either,
Blue Gal everywhere.
I'm either at Driftglass or at Mr. Electrico everywhere. So if you address one of those people and they go, "Who the hell are you talking about?" That isn't me. But I'm still figuring out what all the buttons do. So bear with me as I do that. Oh, by the way, I still have a blog. You can just drop over there anytime you want to. I have a comment section. I let most of the comments in. I'm still very old school about those things. This week you could also find me on the Brad Friedman show with Desi and Brad and Digby talking about.
That was yesterday.
Yeah. Jesus, feels like a year ago. Time is just meaningless at this point. Curse you, daylight savings time. Anyway, take us out, Blue Gal.
Hey, each week we post to our Facebook page and website at Internet Kitty, sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is Buster. Buster is a housemate, and we usually don't talk about what side of the Rainbow Bridge an Internet Kitty is on. I will tell you, Buster is on this side of the Rainbow Bridge. He is still alive, but he is a housemate of the late Internet Kitty named Leo. And the reason I bring that up is Leo's picture is on the wall behind Buster in this photo. Yeah. So, Leo, we know you're on the other side of the Rainbow Bridge with my mom and that she's spoiling you rotten. And that's all good. And in the meantime, Buster is here being Internet Kitty. And of course, Buster eats freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Dreck, your cat will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured. Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh, my Lord, it's freshly poured. And you can visit Buster at our Facebook page or website, Beautiful Orange Kitty. Our website is proleftpod.com. And you can send your Internet Kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
Don't forget our gourmet coffee guidelines. And believe me, the last 3 days I've been going through coffee like it was water. So if you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is still not charity. This is still our job, and we're still on the job, and we intend to remain on this job. If you can spare $5 a month, please do spare $5 a month at patreon.com/proleftpod. And we're still 100% commercial free, except for our fake sponsors. Please share our show on social media. And this is not just a like and subscribe and, we do appreciate all that. That's wonderful. But there's just a lot of people out there, I think, who feel alone. Like they've been abandoned. They're stuck in a red state. They don't hear people talking the way we talk or the way that this community talks. It might feel a little bit out at sea and need someone to let them know they're not alone. And you can recommend us to them. We're not therapy. We're not paid therapists, but maybe hearing people talk the way they talk inside their own head might help out. And if you want to do that, we'd really appreciate it too.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties are sure damn glad that we didn't throw out all that Cornfield Resistance merch.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.